the f*** is that guy? Who the f*** is that? No, damn know who I am. Who the f*** is that?
A Jeremy Stephens fight, if I've ever seen one. Coming up this weekend at lightweight, we have Joaquim Silva, Neto BJJ, taking on the Body Snatcher, Donald Sutherland. Nope, it's another Canadian, Jesse Ronson. And when it comes down to this fight, the reason why I had that audio drop, I don't really mean any disrespect, but for both of these guys, the level of significance of this fight is you get to keep your spot in the UFC.
Pretty much.
And that's pretty much it. And the reason why I have that drop, listen, Topology rankings don't mean anything, but when you have the 87th ranked lightweight Silva taking on the 125th ranked Jesse Ronson, we are really scraping the bottom of the barrel in this fight.
Joaquim Silva is like a used car at a dealership that looks really good upon first inspection, and the dealer's gonna be like, oh yeah, it's great, it's like Paulo Costa but smaller. And then you're gonna like bring it to another garage, like maybe you have a friend who owns a garage and you're like, hey, I'm gonna bring this car by to see if it's all that in a bag of chips. And he just tells you it's full of body filler and it's gonna fall apart at any day. Joaquim Silva, again, upon first inspection, is a great fighter. Does he have hand speed? Boy, does he ever. He has great power in his hands, good boxing combinations. Doesn't throw enough kicks, but hey, you can't have everything. He's a good BJJ fighter. He has decent wrestling. He's good in the clinch. Again, if you just look at it all at surface value, he is pretty good. But the problem is, then you go into the intangibles, the things that separate a good fighter from a great fighter. Is Silva the most durable fighter? No. Does he have good cardio? Not really. Does he have good striking defense? I would disagree with that point as well. So that's the thing with Silva. Are his fights entertaining? They almost always are. He's in that Jimmy Manuwa category of kill or be killed. He can win by knockout, lose by knockout, win by submission, lose by submission. And that's why I'm always going to be excited for one of his fights. But we don't talk about Marco Polo Reyes on this channel. And you know why? Because he was a guy who would win by knockout or lose by knockout. And if you do that enough times, you're no longer going to be in the organization. And that's the thing about Silva. I thought, especially early on, he was going to have a promising UFC career. Not saying I thought he was going to be champion or anything like that, but I thought, hey, maybe Silva could get into the rankings. Because again, he's good on the feet. He has power. If it does go to the mat, he has the submission ability to be able to clean up a lot of his own messes. The thing is, though, his inability to eat power shots, and just to eat power shots...
Whoa. The craziest part about it is, go back and watch Joaquim Silva's last fight. He's taking on Ricky Glenn, and he backs up Ricky Glenn with all of his power shots. I'm not even kidding. Watch the fight. Ricky Glenn hits him from this distance away, and it drops him. And then he gets back up, and he goes to his head. He doesn't even... Now, Ricky Glenn's powerful. He's a former featherweight at lightweight, and they were just short, like, very short shots.
They beat the brakes off him.
And it completely floors him. So for Joaquim Silva, we've seen chin issues. We've seen really long layoffs throughout his career. He's a guy that came into the Ultimate Fighter, Brazil Season 4. He went 4-0 after the show, had a fight of the night against Jared Gordon, where he ends up, looking really good. Right down the stretch, he gets the finish. But you look at the losses. Lost to Vince Pichel by decision. Now, originally, I will say this. On August the 18th, it was supposed to be Vince Pichel versus Jesse Ronson. Pichel's out, in steps Joaquim Silva. But you look at it, he loses to Vince Pichel by decision. He then goes out and loses to Nasrat Haqparast by finish. He loses to Ricky Glenn by finish. The wheels have fallen off Joaquim Silva, but for Jesse Ronson, he came into the UFC, fought with the Score Fighting Series, which is great for us Canadians here. He then goes on, he fights, with BTC, gets a win over, AFC, BTC, AFC.
Not a young guy, is he?
Gets a win over Shane Campbell, and then he punched his short notice ticket into the UFC, and he fights Michel Prazeres. And the good thing about Jesse Ronson is, he had pre-UFC wins over Jason Sago and Alex Ricci. UFC fighters, also from Canada, so slimish pickings. But for Ronson, he had a good level of competition coming into the UFC. Loses to Prazeres, Francisco Trinaldo, and Kevin Lee, all by split decision. Leaves the UFC. Has a salty run. Loses 2 fights with the PFL. Now, if you do look at it, he did fight a guy who's a main training partner of Joaquim Silva in Natan Schultz. And in that fight, Ronson's opponent missed weight. Schultz's opponents missed weight. They went, well, do you guys want to fight each other on day's notice? He takes that fight. He loses that fight. That's fine.
The old Nate Diaz, Tony Ferguson.
He loses to Nikolai Alexiakin by finish. He then goes out and with BTC beats Troy Lamson. So there's my point that I was mixing up in my mind. And then he comes in on short notice up a weight class and fights Nicholas Dalby. And it was competitive at the start, and then he drops Dalby, and Dalby's usually like a fish out of water on the ground. And Ronson's able to, in the exchange, from mount to back mount, off the side, get a rear naked choke. It's a really weird submission. He gets a performance bonus. He tests positive, tainted supplement, so he claims, but he finished all the supplements, so they couldn't test it. So Ronson accepts a ban, and then his last time out, fights Rafa Garcia and got ground out. For Jesse Ronson, it hasn't been good in the UFC. It's been wishy-washy outside of the UFC. I can't paint a great picture out of this fight because it very much is like flip your coin and make your pick.
Because again, Silva's going to look good until he doesn't. I can see a world where he drops Ronson, has him hurt, looks really good, and then all of a sudden, midway through the second round, Ronson lands an uppercut, finishes Silva, and I look like an idiot forever thinking Neto BJJ would win this fight to begin with. But the thing about Silva is he does have a solid skill set. Like, if you just look at what he does well and doesn't do well inside the cage, I can't take anything away from his boxing. I can't take anything away from his grappling. And since I do like the foundation of his game, I can see a world where he looks really good in this fight until he doesn't, like I just said. So for me, in a prediction on this one, the weird thing about Ronson is he does have good submission abilities, but he has been susceptible to the submission in the past. So if Silva has him hurt, then I can see Silva winning by submission. If he has Silva hurt, I can see him winning by submission. That's why it is so volatile going either way. But I still like the overall skill and game plan out of Silva. I never thought that was a sentence I'd utter on this channel, but I think that he does have good enough power on the feet to where if he doesn't eat one of those big knockout blows, he'll be able to do enough damage throughout this fight to be able to at least win rounds.
The fucking guy sees red every fight.
He does.
That's his biggest attribute, and it's also his biggest downfall. And for Jesse Ronson, you talk about complete skill sets. You look at Ronson, he was a former double champ with TKO in Quebec. He trains out of Adrenaline Mixed Martial Arts in Ontario. He's out of London himself, which is where the gym is, Mark Homanik's gym. You've seen Bazooka Joe Valtellini in that gym as well. We're talking about Canadian icons
Canadian
here.
all-star team.
When you look at it for Jesse Ronson, though, kickboxing being pretty well the base, and he does throw a lot of kicks, and he will throw them to all three levels. So I do like that out of Ronson, just an added component to his game. You look at the odds here, Silva open to minus 170, minus 155. You look at it for Ronson, open plus 145, plus 125. We have a look at the Tapology votes, Matt. Surprise to us, there to you. I'm going to say over under 65% Joaquim Silva, but this is quite literally the most volatile matchup I think I've ever tried to break down in Fight Night Picks history.
When it can finish via any of the 4 true outcomes, we need to start coining that. Like in baseball, 3 true outcomes, 4 true outcomes. Knockout win, submission win, knockout loss, submission loss for either guy. That's how this fight could go. Of course, if it goes to a decision, it's probably going to be a weird split decision because both guys are able to do enough damage. I know it's a weird thing to say. Just, this is a very even fight between two guys who are good. They have good skill sets. They just, again, they lack some of the intangibles that you look for when you think about ranked fighters in this division, especially in lightweight, but I do still have Joaquim Silva as the official prediction.
So over under?
Oh, sorry.
65%? You're thinking it's Silva?
I think it's going to be over, yeah.
Alright. It is over. 660 total votes, 82% Silva, 65% by decision, 12% by submission, 17% by knockout. I'm not here to say that that equals 100%, but it is what it is in Tapology. For the 18% that have Ronson, 49% by decision, 38% by knockout. I have Joaquim Silva. I assume he's going to be able to take it down to the mat, but just pop and popcorn this one. Yeah, not a lot of confidence in this one, but these are the ones we need to hear from you down below in the comments section. Let us know who you have in this matchup. Both of us going with Neto BJJ and not our fellow Canadian in this one because a lot of people are just so down. Oh, you guys took Barrio to beat Hernandez. You don't know anything about fighting. Listen, we don't like to take Canadians, and sometimes you just don't like to take a Canadian, but you do in that matchup. In this one, we are not. You let us know who you have in the comments. And in the main event, Mackenzie Dern taking on Xiaonan. Co-main event, Rude Boy Randy Brown, Masaran Duba, Francisco Trinaldo. Keep locked in with Fight Night Picks, we always say. Let's get into it.